And then people don't recognize that Thomas Jefferson had a little set of stones himself with the Barbary pirates.
Pirates that were in their frigates that were basically taking over ships and being pirates. And it took Jefferson and his determination to send the U.S. forces over to the area and combat and fight the Barbary pirates.
I don't think we ever declared war on the Barbary pirates. They declared war on us. We're calling your bluff. And Jefferson sent the Marines. And
so wait, you're saying that was the first that was the first use of Article 2 powers by a president?
Bingo. You took the words right out of my mouth. You did. So there's Jefferson being badass. That's the F me? No, F you.
Welcome to the Republic Podcast, where history meets scrutiny and facts matter. Join Rob and Lou as they dive deep into the foundations of American democracy, dissect the laws that shape our lives, and challenge the narratives behind today's headlines. From forgotten chapters in the U.S. history to the legal truths they didn't teach you in school. This is your front row seat to get informed, unapologetic conversation. We have an American republic, if we can keep it. Now, let's get started.
Lou, my brother.
Rob, my brother. Here's to you.
Where's to you. And everyone out there, thanks for liking, subscribing, sharing. Keep doing it. The numbers are great. We love the interaction, the feedback.
Yep. And we again, the feedback has been great. That the monthly docket is growing and is picking up steam. So we appreciate the input on that. For those of you that don't know what we're talking about, well, then you've missed the bus. Go back, take a look at the old podcast, and you'll see it there under the specific one of the monthly docket. So anyway,
the monthly docket.
What are we going to do today, Rob? What are we talking about today?
Today, we are back on the list. We started with the top 10 founding fathers. Number one, of course, the OG, the man, the myth, the legend.
George Washington.
Bam. The man. Number two was the guy behind the scenes who seemingly did it all and doesn't get any recognition, or at least not as much as ought to.
John Adams. John Adams.
And so we had a little bit of debate about who should be number three. But on our list for number three, and it's not because it's, first president, second president, third president, it just happened to be Thomas Jefferson. Right. So we're going to talk to you about Thomas Jefferson because you ought to know about Thomas Jefferson, God damn it.
The architect of the Declaration of Independence, the best breakup letter in the entire world. But he was much more than that. And the thing is, that's why we're here to talk about him. That Thomas Jefferson was, out of all of them, you had Washington was the true leader. I mean, he was an incredible leader. You had Adams, who was Machiavelli. He was a guy behind the scenes putting everything together. He was the one that was working it, and he had the knowledge and the foresight. Jefferson was the one that brought it together and was truly the most enlightened and the most dedicated of them as well. That he played a significant role in the early foundation of the country that people still don't really know that much about.
He's the Renaissance man among the founding fathers.
Right.
He had the knowledge and the education and the thirst to understand things like botany and architecture, engineering, history, Latin, Greek, all literature, history. He had a breadth of knowledge that was tremendous. It's not a coincidence that when the Committee of Five was selected at the Constitutional
Convention,
the convention, the Continental Congress. I'm sorry.
Yep.
At the Continental Congress to write the Declaration of Independence, that the four others kind of looked at him like, yeah, he's the guy. But he's a man of many contradictions.
Yes.
And when we go through the stuff of his history, you're going to hopefully understand why we say he's a man of contradictions. Not to say he was a bad man, not to say he was a good man, not to say he was whatever. He's a human, and he ran the gamut from time to time with different things, and he kind of flip-flopped here and there with
And
different
you
what's
have
that?
to take this all you have to take this all in context of the time. I mean, again,
And
we
anyone or all of you who've been here with us from the beginning, you know that's the operative word that we talk about a lot, context.
so anyway, putting it back into context.
Right. So, let's get into TJ, Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson was born in 1743,
Mm,
and he came from a family of means. His mother, as I understand it, could trace her lineage back to Scottish and into British monarchy, the royalty. His father was a very large landowner in the colonies and made a very good living, if not a fortune, for himself and his family. So Thomas was given all the perks of education, and he took advantage of it.
right.
Um, Up and into and through going to College of William and Mary, he became a lawyer, studied the law, came through all this stuff, and he was just a well-off to do lawyer until he started dipping his toes into politics.
Got bit
And
by
then
the
in
bug of freedom.
1768, he's voted in to go to the Virginia House of Burgesses, and that started the ball rolling.
Mhm. So, and the one thing that that's unique about him is that, as Rob said, as a Renaissance man, he was involved in many different things, and that as we'll get into later on, that of course, in at that time, his family were slave owners, and at one point he owned 600 slaves, and that's where we're going to get into the contradiction of what is Thomas Jefferson. But what are some other things that he did? That again, we've talked about it, and for those of you who saw us when we were discussing the Declaration of Independence, that he was the writer of the Declaration of Independence, and that the main thing that he viewed it as being the scholar that he was, being as well studied as he was. He studied Locke, he studied the philosophers, and that he was very well versed in it. That he saw the Declaration of Independence not just as the greatest breakup letter in the entire world, but he saw that as a declaration of natural rights for people, that saying that government is there for the people. It is not there to rule over them, but to assist them in governing themselves. And that's
Right,
really what he did. And that's what his view of it was. So,
right. When he first got into the House of Burgesses, he fell in with a crowd
mhm,
that they called themselves, well, they didn't call themselves, they were referred to as some of the radical fringe. Patrick Henry, you
mhm.
know,
Yep.
even George Washington was a little more of, he was pissed off at the British for a couple of different reasons and the crown and this and that, but talking about the taxation issues and talking about how the crown was being heavy handed. And, there were this particular faction with Patrick Henry, they weren't going to take any gruff, and they were really pushing towards, although they weren't really vocalizing back in 1768, the thought about independence, but they was really starting to foment. Um, he's invited Thomas Jefferson is to the Second Continental Congress, and of course we talk about this. He wasn't at the first one, but he comes to the second one, and he's really one of the junior players there. But everyone knows of him from his time in Virginia at the
Right.
House of Burgesses. He's also written a book in 1774, and they know how well versed he is and how well he's good, as they might say, working a pen. So he's on the committee of five when the Virginia delegation sends to the Continental Congress the question, why haven't we talked about independence? Let's talk about it. And after good deliberations back and forth, they finally said, yeah, let's do this. But we need a Declaration of Independence to be written.
Right.
The 5-member committee, John Adams, Ben Franklin, Roger Sherman, and from Pennsylvania, Robert Livingston, I think he's
Yep.
from Pennsylvania, and Thomas Jefferson. Those are the five. John Adams was later quoted by saying, like, yeah, we kind of gave the give it to the youngest guy in the group, Thomas
Right.
Jefferson, because we knows he could do the best job of it.
33 years old. 33 years old, and he's given the task of writing this letter, which will forever change the course of history for the country.
Now think about this, and we mentioned this when we were talking about the Declaration of Independence before. In this day and age, some 33-year-olds are still living in your basement with mom and dad, failing to launch. I'll leave it like that. Well, I don't know. I don't feel, and everyone's got different. I'm not trying to cast aspersions on, if people really have a genuine issue, whatever, but the times they have changed and they've swung in a particular direction. Then 33-year-old guy, yeah, here, we want you to write the Declaration of Independence. And he does. Takes him about 2.5 weeks or so.
Mhm.
And it is, as Lou often says, the greatest breakup letter of all time. And if you
Copyright.
haven't seen our episode on the Declaration of Independence, go down, go to our YouTube page, go to the videos, find it, learn it, love it, live it.
No shirts, no shoes, no dice. What? And for
So
those of you,
after that, so
yeah,
what do you do after you write the Declaration of Independence? Well, for him, it was kind of like, from 1776 to 1779, he goes back to Virginia. He's in the House of Delegates.
right,
Um, he winds up being elected as their governor in 1779. The revolution is well underway at this point. And I got to tell you, is from what all I've read and know about him as a governor, not the greatest of reviews.
right,
The one thing that always stuck out to me in reading about him as a governor, the war, the Revolutionary War, had started up in the Northeast, generally speaking, and now it's making its way south.
down, right,
And in 1779 through the first part of the 1780s, the Revolutionary
right
was
there.
in the Southern theater. We've already gone over the fact that General Washington and everyone associated with the Continental Army was begging, pleading with the Continental Congress, as well as directly to individual governors like Governor Jefferson. Please send us men, material, whatever you can give us, munitions, clothes, food. Please, we're literally threadbare. We're starving, and Jefferson wouldn't have it. He wouldn't provide anything.
And
He figured that we wanted to keep everything in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and even people in Virginia didn't get anything from the government, so they were pissed at him too. And he was really a non entity. He was like, yeah,
one of the biggest things though is that the turning point, the pivotal point, the largest battle in the entire Revolutionary War was fought in Yorktown, right there. And he's at that time. There's no assets. There's nothing coming from Virginia. So that's, I mean, they
all
went
the
into,
stuff that came, the American, the colonists under General Greene had come from South Carolina and basically
right,
baited Cornwallis to following them up into Virginia at the bottleneck of Yorktown. The Virginia assets were small and few, if any. So it was really South Carolina militias
right.
and North Carolina militias. There were some from Pennsylvania, the riflemen, Delaware, other states and colonies. Not as much from Virginia as you would think. So makes his way through to be governor, such as it is. And he was almost captured right toward the end of his term. And
Right.
there's some funny stories about that where he didn't believe it. He kind of sat there. He was in Monticello, and the British were going to go get him. And basically someone literally had to yank him out, like, we got to go like now. And he barely,
Right.
the tales of his escape really kind of haunted him because they painted it like he was some coward, but it just went part and parcel with his time as governor. It just didn't play out well. And you think, aside from the Declaration of Independence thing, this isn't boding well for him being number 3 on the founding fathers list for Lou and Rob, but
Right.
things changed a
And
little bit.
and for good cause. I mean, there's some, again, a man of contradictions. And that's why
Right.
there was a discussion about whether or not he should be number 3 or not. But then comes his renaissance and his comeback. He's back, ladies and gentlemen. And
Dun,
how
dun,
he
dun. His Now he had been living in Monticello, which was on his father's land that his father had owned since like 1735. And in 1760 something, where's my notes? 1769,
Yep.
he began construction on that land of the estate called Monticello. And if you haven't been there, you should go. It's truly fascinating. It's wonderful.
Oh yeah.
What's even more astounding is Jefferson's the Renaissance man. He drew up his own blueprints, did all the engineering and how this worked and that worked. He did all the botany and laid out the gardens in a certain way. He did everything. It was like, I mean, he came out, not that he laid every stone, but and this is part of that dichotomy that we talk about. Here's the guy who penned the phrase, all men are created equal, yet he had at Monticello, while he was there post, say, the time he was a governor, at least 130, from what I read, slaves on
Yeah.
Monticello. His father had more, I believe, but
Yeah.
so again, big contradiction there. You're like, but again, context. It's like George Washington. George Washington was born into a family where there were slaves, and it's what he knew. And when he was 11 years old, George Washington became a slave owner himself when his father passed. So minds had to be changed, different thoughts and attitudes. And it's no different with Thomas Jefferson. Not that he changed them very much, but
But there is a big action that he did, and we'll get to that later on once he was president, and had to do with the land acquisition, and but we'll get to that.
so we'll get back to Monticello and all some of the other stuff from that, uh, and the issues with slavery in particular. And 1782, his wife passes. She was 34 years old. And he had vowed to all of his friends, I'm done with public service. I'm done. I just want to go back to Monticello and be a quiet farmer and all that stuff. Well, he couldn't get rid of the itch. So in 1783, he led the Virginia delegation to the Confederation Congress. And in 1785, he was appointed to be the minister to France to replace Benjamin Franklin.
Right.
And he was in France for roughly 4 or 5 years, and he was doing all the loans and trade agreements and whatever, and he did tremendous work on behalf of the colonies. But when he came back in 1789, he always knew the way that Europe was at that time, with when they had these Baroque kings with, they took, all the gold and opulence and this and that. There was such a dichotomy between these leaders who thought themselves as mini gods and their average citizenry. When he came back to the colonies, the appreciation for what he saw that this country was being able to provide for its citizens, it just swelled him with pride.
Yeah. And
And
one of the most
but
important things, and I think one of the things that really shaped his view of that is, while he was ambassador to France, he was there when the French Revolution started. He was like
right,
watching it outside his window as an ambassador, and like, holy shit, there's actually this going on. And he's watching the French rise up against their monarchy and having their own revolution. And that's when, he decided, okay, time to go back.
when he came back, he wrote a letter to his friend and confidant James Monroe,
Mhm.
who would later on be, I think, the fifth president. He said, and the quote was, "My God, how little do my countrymen know what precious blessings they are in possession of, and which no other people on earth enjoy." Lou and I were just talking before we started to hit the record button. We started talking about how important it is to get different perspectives. And this goes hand in hand with our other podcast where we talk about that this country was founded on dialogue. It's founded on a give and take. It's founded on the need to have those respectful arguments. You can have an argument, that's fine, but it's the whole idea of exchanging thoughts and processes and different ways to look at the world. Here's this guy who's lived in pretty much comfort in Virginia, and Philadelphia when he's gone to the Continental Congress, and that's been all what he's known. Now he's gone to Europe, he's come back, and he's going around as governor to different places within the Commonwealth and seeing different people, and it really hits him. Wow, we really have it so good. The stuff that's, here, that's made available to us, that we were able to put in place through the revolution, wow. So, a little bit of a segue, but not too much of a segue. If you get a chance, go out of your comfort zones. If you live in the Northeast, travel through the Midwest or the West or the South. Or if you're always from the South, go to the Northwest, go to California, go to Northeast. Wherever it is, challenge your
Travel.
assumptions. Right.
Yeah. Travel.
Anyway,
Check
I'll
out.
get off my high horse.
No. But you're absolutely right. It's a matter of getting an outside perspective. Travel to other countries. See what they have, but don't just go there as a tourist, but actually go there to take a look at things and really see, and find out about the country before you go there. Uh, you know, it, having been overseas and having and been stationed overseas, it changes your perspective on a lot of different things. And for as I've said before, the America is not a perfect country. We're a young country in the history of the world, and we're trying our best. And that again, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, these are ideals, and that we're still trying to live up to those ideals that our founding fathers, like Jefferson, laid out for us.
Right.
But anyway, it's again, it's something that's great. And again, it gave Jefferson the perspective that not many other people had at that time. It's not like a lot of the people traveled across the world at that time. Very few people did it. And even most of our founding fathers had never been there. So he had a
Right.
unique perspective. And just to circle back, if anyone has an opportunity to read Democracy in America, that is another book that is just, I highly recommend. And it's a Frenchman's version of what he views in America. So
Right.
anyway, so what else do you have about Jefferson? Some of the, so after
Well, when he came back from being the ambassador, he found out that here's George Washington just been elected president, first president, and George Washington says, "Hey, man, Thomas,
you're the one,
you're the one I want to be my Secretary of State." So,
you're the
Thomas
one that I
Jefferson was
want,
our first
one that I
Secretary of
want.
State.
I'm sorry.
Du, du, du.
So yes, he was the one that Washington wanted because
Right.
of his education, because he's been to other countries and he's familiar with Europe and has seen it and has those connections. So
But unfortunately, in Washington's cabinet,
mhm.
there were some rifts that started to build and really came to a head at the end or toward the end of Washington's second term. There were Federalists that Washington was a Federalist, and, um, Jefferson was they called themselves a Republican, really a Democrat. They called the Democrat
Democrat
Republican
Republican
Party,
Party,
but
yeah,
they call themselves Republicans.
first opposition party.
Right, and painting with a very, very broad brush. The Federalists believed in a strong national government, a federal government, having broader interpretation of the Constitution so that they can use it for different things, not just strict interpretation. Um, and they wanted neutrality with Europe. They didn't want to get involved with European affairs. It's just a mess. We already divorced ourselves from the crown.
We
It's
just
just
we don't
enough.
want to start seeing our ex. The breakup letter.
It's true. It's true. And whereas the Democratic Republicans would say the supremacy of the state and at the state level is what's more important than a centralized federal government. They generally believed in a stricter interpretation of the Constitution. Um, and Jefferson, for example, was a big supporter of the French Revolutionaries and the French Revolution. We already did it. Let's help them and maybe get involved in some European things. Well, those rifts really started to build, and
Right.
it got to Jefferson where he kept getting outvoted. So in 1794, he resigned instead of continuing to butt heads with everybody. But in the election of 1796, he was put up for election. Now, it's different than today where you actually run and you're out there kissing babies and you have all sorts of placards and, whatever. Um, Elections were other politicians would put you up as their
A
candidate,
good
and
person,
you
right?
just sat back and see what happens. There was all sorts of backdoor lobbying and this and that. He was put up in for election in 1796 against John Adams. John Adams beat him by three electoral votes.
Yeah.
But the way the law was at the time, whoever was running the number two person wound up being the
Well,
vice president.
right.
So even though you're on opposite sides of the fence, imagine that today. Imagine Kamala Harris being the vice president for Donald Trump. Wow, that's a
Yeah.
mind bender.
Well,
Anyway,
that's
so there he was. He's the vice president, and he's pretty pissed off because he lost the election, but Adams treats him like a nobody because they've already had their rift and they're in the middle of their rift. They'd been greatest of friends, and then there was a falling out. This is the middle of their falling out.
right. And
So
for anyone that saw the thing on Adams last week, the last time, that's where we
right.
discussed it. And we sort of talked about the relationship between them.
So Thomas Jefferson was left out of the decision making by Adams because one, the rift that was ongoing. Two, there was that Federalist Democratic Republican dichotomy, and number three, George Washington did the same thing to Adams. So Adams probably just did the same thing to Jefferson. Like, I'm just keeping you on the sideline. But that all changed at the election of 1800. And this time, Thomas Jefferson wins the presidency. But real quick, the election of 1800 was unique. Why was it unique, you might say?
Why? Why? Tell us why, Rob. It was very
I'm
unique.
glad you asked.
Because
The Federalists didn't back John Adams because
right.
they'd had enough of him. They thought that he was washed up or whatever it might be. So he didn't factor in it. It was Thomas Jefferson against Aaron Burr. And at the time of the votes, both Jefferson and Burr received the same amount of electoral votes. It was tied. So it was the first tie for a presidential election. And this was the first time that Article 2, Section 1 of the Constitution
Right.
was into play. When they say if there's a tie, the House of Representatives has to debate it, and they pick one. And the representatives picked Thomas Jefferson. That's how he became president.
So, and again, so for everybody saying that the electoral college is, outdated and it's stupid and useless and everything else, there's a perfect example right there where, it works. But anyway,
It worked. So also, this was the first time for any modern republic that there was a peaceful transition of power between two different parties.
right.
Thomas Jefferson sat.
No government.
So Thomas Jefferson was there for 2 terms. And his first term was really quite remarkable. But again, a little bit of a kind of a dichotomy. He stripped the presidency of a lot of the trappings that we're starting to, get in about, he didn't want anything to be akin to a monarchy or even thought of a monarchy or to look like this. He reduced the size of the armed forces because he wanted to balance budgets and whatever. And he reduced our debt from $80 million at the time. And $80 million back in 1800 is a lot of money.
Right.
Because we had to borrow all this money for the war effort for the revolution. He chewed it down to 57 million. So that's $23 million he took off the top. That was great. But then, because of his contacts with France, because he'd been the ambassador and he knew they were hard up for money, he negotiates the Louisiana
Purchase. Yep. And the Louisiana Purchase was one of the greatest things because that is what basically created the America or began to create the America that we know. It's where that Jefferson worked out buying 828,000 square miles.
I was going to say.
Yep. Big purchase. And he began our westward expansion. And as Rob said, knowing that France was hurting, he worked out this land deal for what was the equivalent then of $15 million. So $15 million for 828,000 square miles of property. And that's where, you know, we set up the new states, we push out, out to the Mississippi and beyond. And it began our basically our manifest destiny of westward expansion.
Yep. He, in one fell swoop, doubled the size of more than doubled the size of the
Right.
country. Um, there was some talk at the time, like, do you have the authority to do this and whatever? And he's like, yeah, how about all the money? You're always saying you're a fiscal conservative. We're at $15
Right.
million. What? It's worth it.
Yeah. But it
And
was
he was
also
right on both. So again, a little bit of, you talk one way, but you do something else. It's all good.
yeah, but also a lot of it was be for the $15 million was also a trade-off of saying, look, we owe you this money, you know,
Right.
so let's balance it out. You
Right.
want our help and stuff like that. And again, the other thing that he that as part of the Louisiana Purchase, that by securing what he did, he now had the Mississippi River, which now created a huge avenue of trade for the United States, which began a trade up to Canada, all the way through everything. It made it tremendously profitable for the United States. So in the end, that $15 million was made up in pretty quick fashion by the trade that they were able
Right.
to establish.
And not just north south on the Mississippi River.
Right,
I mean, the purchase took from the Mississippi all the way to the Rockies.
right.
So from the Southwest all the way up to the Pacific Northwest. And so you go up the Mississippi, but you could take the Missouri River again, avenue of commerce.
Mhm.
Um, it just, it was very forward thinking. And if that was all he ever did as president, that would be amazing nonetheless. But he did more. He
Right. But
commissioned
wait, there's
Lewis and
more.
Clark, but there's more. He commissioned Lewis and
Wow.
Clark to go out on their expedition,
Mhm.
which lasted years because they didn't just hop on their Ford Bronco and like, woo! They had to navigate. I mean, talk about balls of steel. The people of that time getting into some wooden rickety boats. There were, I think, there were like three of them, three boats, and they went into like, okay, just keep going there. Well, what's over there? I have no idea. You're going to find out. Let us know when you come back,
Yeah.
if you come back.
Right. Right.
So they did that, and then people don't recognize that Thomas Jefferson, despite the fact of his record as governor with the Continental Army begging for this, and he actually had a little set of stones himself with the Barbary pirates.
Oh, yes. The Barbary pirates, where that's for anybody that for all you Marines out there, hoorah, but that's where you have the basically the stories of the Marines begin, and with the
That's
Battle of
right.
the
From,
Barbary
from
Pirates.
the all the Montezuma to
Right.
the shores of Tripoli.
Tripoli. Yep. And that also for at the time that there was where the Cutter Revenue Service, also known as now the United States Coast Guard, um, also established their fame as well and started. So that was something where that was a huge thing, fighting the Barbary pirates. And for anyone that's not familiar with it, it's where you had the trade avenues that went from the United States all the way across down the Barbary coast. And you had the pirates that were in their frigates that were basically taking over ships and being pirates. And it took Jefferson and his determination to send the U.S. forces over to the area and combat and fight the Barbary pirates. Basically, where their demands were, you either pay us uh, homage and a regular funds, or we're just going to keep doing this. And Jefferson's like, "Nah, bro, that's not how this goes. We're not going to live with that."
And it's not like there was just up in Newfoundland in Canada or
Right,
down in the Keys in Florida. This is across the ocean in North Africa.
right,
And basically what was happening, the Barbary pirates would set upon commercial vessels, take them hostage. They would either hold people ransom or sell them into slavery.
right.
unless you paid them a certain, like you said, Lou said, some sort of stipend, so we'd leave you alone. And Jefferson, when he heard that this was happening to, American ships, he's like, "What the ever living what?"
Mhm.
And they said, "You need to pay us this." And he said, "Go F yourself."
Yeah. I'll pay you with lead.
Yeah. And ironically enough, we've been talking about this in some of our special editions about declarations of war. There was actually something I was reading on the internet, because this is why you don't believe the internet, whatever you read on there. They said that we had declared war. I'm like, I don't think we ever declared war on the Barbary Pirates. They declared war on us,
Right.
dumbasses that they were.
So so wait, you're saying
They
that's the
declared
first
war on us, and
presidential.
we just said, "All right, we're calling your bluff." And Jefferson sent the Marines and gave them a whooping.
So wait,
No
you're
more
saying that
Barbary
was the
Pi
first that was the first use of Article 2 powers by a president?
Bingo. Bingo. You took the words right out of my mouth. You did. So there's Jefferson being badass, being like
And that's in 1804.
180, yeah. It started like the whole Barbary War is like 1801, and he sent them out in 1803,
Mhm.
1804. That's the F me? No, F you. And he set the precedent of all things. And there
Right.
are some people at, who kind of wondered, like, okay, so this is a Democratic Republican who thought, the strict constitutional limits and all that other stuff, but he's expanding the power of the federal government.
Right.
Good. Good for you. So that was his first term. And in his second term, things kind of turned a little bit.
Yeah.
He tried to impeach some Federalist judges, didn't work out so well. Um, but the biggest deal was the fact that Britain and France, who have historically always hated always fighting, always went on, they were continuing to do so. And America was like, look, we're not getting involved in that shit. We want to have commerce with both of you, but we're not getting involved in your fight. And those those two countries independently were like, no, we don't want you to do business with them. The French said, I don't want you to do business with England. England said, I don't want you to do business with France. So that American shipping was then seized, and it became to such a problem that Jefferson came up with the Embargo Act of 1807 and got everyone in Congress to go along with it. Well, that did nothing but tank the economy,
Right.
because the Embargo Act basically said you can't do business with
French
anyone in
foreign.
England or
Right.
France. And by the time he left office at the end of 1809, we had just started to say, okay, well, we'll rehabilitate some things with France. And then Monroe came in and rehabilitated things with France, but England kept saying, screw you. And basically, the Embargo Act was the part of the genesis that led to the War of 1812. But that's another story.
But we'll be discussing that in another episode.
That's true. So that's Thomas Jefferson for his presidency. But he wasn't done yet.
But wait, there's still more.
There's still more. He's the one who created and organized the University of Virginia, which was the first secular university in the country. That opened in 1825. He had been back in Monticello after his time as president for 20 something years. And again, the issues with the slavery, people will talk about the fact that, there's the dichotomy here and there. He's the man who penned the Declaration of Independence and all men are created equal. But he was a man that he had so much intellectual power, clearly. And sometimes it worked out well, and sometimes it didn't. It
Right.
didn't. But I'll tell you what, for the things that he did do and really took the steps to be bold about, that's why he's number 3 as a founding father. Declaration of Independence, writing the Virginia, he wrote the part about the religious freedom. He did the president. He's been ambassador to France. Louisiana Purchase, Barbary, pirates. That's a
Right.
pretty good resume right there, my friend.
Right. And I mean, and just circling back on one of the things that you also mentioned, the other dichotomy that we also spoke about is the fact that he was a slave owner and that his family owned slaves when he was younger. He ended up at the time that he was living at Monticello had approximately 600 slaves, and there's even like now proof that he actually fathered some children with one of the slaves that he had, which was actually the half sister of his wife. So, but that's in another entire genealogy and lineage thing. He was one where he saw that slavery was wrong, but was not at the point where he was willing to abolish slavery completely within the United States when he was president.
But he was all, like I said, here's the dichotomy. He could recognize the thing, but he also was self he had a very, I would imagine, a very strong self-preservation and
Pragmatic, yeah,
literal literal preservation, and also continuing his way of life. Um, the great quote that he's known for when it comes to slavery, he said, "We have the wolf by the ears, and we can neither hold him nor safely let him go. Justice is on one scale, and self-preservation in the other." So here's a
again,
guy who has a very profitable farm going on, his business, whatever it might be, his homestead at Monticello, which is propped up and continued by the the slaves that he owns in servitude. But he also recognizes, on the other hand, in a literal, in that um, ephemeral sense, like, oh, all men are created equal. This is I'm. This is the ideal. But when reality hits the road, he's like, ugh.
right,
Boy, I really like the Monticello that I have, and I like how it's being run. Like you said, he identifies the wolf. He has it by the ears, but he can't let it go
right,
because it's just
and that's as we've discussed before when discussing all the founding fathers that they recognize the wrong, but they also recognize that in order to keep the nation together, that's the black sin. That's a black mark on the soul of, as I can't remember who it was. It's a black mark on the soul of America. But it was one that was, as we've talked about in during the Great Compromise discussions, a compromise that had to be made at that time to create America and keep America going, knowing that we would write that eventually.
right.
So,
But
but number three,
number three, he was also. I'll leave it with this to wrap it up. All the things I've read about him, he was an optimist.
mhm,
And the one quote that there's all sorts that come from the Declaration, the wolf by the ears and all that stuff. But the one quote that always seems to resonate to me, that I remember reading back when I was in high school: "All tyranny needs to gain a foothold is for people of good conscience to remain
remain
silent."
silent. Mhm,
Truer words never said otherwise. So,
right.
Thomas Jefferson, number three,
Number three. Here's
here's
the
to
number
you.
three. So, for everyone that's been with us, thank you for your support. Don't forget, like, share, subscribe, spread it amongst your friends. You tell two friends, they tell two friends. Next thing we're rock stars, and we bring you all with us. And with that note, everyone, cheers, brother Rob.
Cheers, Lou.
Cheers to all you out there. Again, this is the Republic. If you can keep it podcast, and we'll see you next episode.
Absolutely. If you can keep it,
If you can
and
keep it.
please do.
Shut up and sit down.
Thanks for listening to the Republic, If You Can Keep It podcast. Join Rob and Lou in our next episode as we continue our riveting discussions on the most important topics affecting our great republic. Drop a line for topics you want to discuss, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.
Until next time.